7 stages. Every dominant power in history has passed through them, without exception. Rome, Spain, France, Britain, Weimar Germany, the Soviet Union. 6 empires, same pattern, same outcome. And on September 30th, 2025, the United States quietly crossed the threshold into Stage 7, the final phase of imperial life, and the point of no return. Here is how every empire dies, and why 2026 marks the moment the American currency and the system built around it begin to end. After World War II, the planet rebuilt under one currency. 44 nations signed the Bretton Woods Agreement, pegging their money to the US dollar and the dollar to gold. For 2 decades, gold flowed in, industry exploded, and living standards soared. A single income bought a home, 2 cars, college, and a retirement pension. America produced half of global GDP. It was an era of confidence and limitless growth, the American century in its purest form. Rome experienced the same golden phase after the Punic Wars. Conquest poured treasure into the city. Citizens were rewarded with land and wealth. Britain lived its own version after 1815. Global trade, industrial revolution, unquestioned dominance. Every empire begins with the illusion of permanence. Prosperity creates faith, and faith creates complacency. Stage 2 always follows. Power demands protection, and protection demands armies. By the mid-20th century, America was stationing troops on every continent: Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, Ukraine. 800 bases in more than 80 countries. Each war was sold as the one that would make the world safe for democracy. Each left the nation deeper in debt and more divided at home. Rome did the same after conquering Gaul in the east. Legions spread thin, costs soaring, tax burdens crushing citizens. Spain bled itself dry fighting across Europe to defend its New World empire. Britain bankrupted itself in 2 world wars to hold on to colonies it could no longer afford. The pattern never changes. Military glory turns into financial gravity. By the 2020s, U.S. defense spending topped $800 billion a year, more than the next 10 nations combined. It keeps the flag everywhere but the balance sheet bleeding. And the debt that funds it creates Stage 3. In 1971, President Nixon closed the gold window. For the first time in modern history, the world's reserve currency was backed by nothing but trust. Wages stagnated as productivity rose. Families took second incomes and third jobs to stand still. Debt filled the gap that paychecks no longer covered. By 2025, 60% of Americans couldn't afford a $1,000 emergency. The middle class, the buffer between poverty and power, was collapsing. Rome's farmers once fed the empire and owned their land. By 250 AD, they were debt slaves to the elite latifundia. Britain's working families after 1918 saw the same fate. Wages frozen while costs rose and industrial jobs outsourced to the colonies. In the Soviet Union, engineers and teachers watched savings turn to dust as the ruble collapsed. Middle classes don't just die economically, they die psychologically. When people stop believing hard work can change their future, the empire starts rotting from the inside. Once prosperity is built on credit, money ceases to be wealth. It becomes a promise to repay the past. In 2025, U.S. national debt crossed $36 trillion, with over $200 trillion in unfunded liabilities for Social Security and Medicare. Interest payments alone now surpass defense spending. Every empire hits this wall. Rome debased its denarius until silver content fell below 5%. Weimar Germany printed so many marks that children played with stacks of currency blocks. Spain flooded Europe with silver from the New World until its own money was worthless. Each believed they could outprint reality. Each destroyed the trust that held their economy together. In America today, the Federal Reserve creates money with keystrokes and calls it policy. Since 2008, the balance sheet has grown from under $1 trillion to over $9 trillion. The illusion of control remains, but the currency has already changed. It's no longer dollars backed by gold. It's IOUs backed by hope. While America prints, others prepare. On October 29, 2025, the BRICS bloc, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, formally launched a gold-backed trade unit to bypass the dollar. Saudi Arabia joined, ending half a century of petrodollar loyalty. China now controls 40% of global gold purchases and holds the world's largest refining capacity. For the first time since 1944, international trade has a real alternative. This is the moment Britain faced in 1956, when the Suez Crisis proved its empire was no longer in charge. The pound sterling collapsed as the US and the World Bank withdrew support. Spain experienced the same when its silver-based currency was rejected across Europe. Reserve currencies don't fade gently. They fall overnight once confidence breaks. The US share of global reserves has slipped from 70% in 2000 to under 58% today. The world is de-dollarizing, while Americans debate if it's even possible. That debate ended the moment Stage 6 began. Stage 6 is where money printing becomes a political addiction. Between 2020 and 2025, M2 money supply increased by 40% in 2 years, the fastest monetary expansion in US history. Prices rose faster than wages. Housing and food became luxuries. Cities erupted in protests and campuses in riots. It was the exact social phase that France entered in 1789, when paper assignats flooded the streets and bread prices doubled. Weimar Germany saw the same symptom: money printing to buy peace. Hyperinflation followed, then extremism. In the Soviet Union, the final years brought empty shelves, corruption, and loss of faith in every institution. When a population realizes its currency is fake, anger turns to desperation, and desperation turns to violence. By 2025, the US experienced record political polarization and trust in Congress fell below 15%. No empire has ever recovered from this stage without radical reform. And reform rarely comes. What comes next is Stage 7. Stage 7 is not chaos. It's management of collapse. The elite know the system is ending, so they prepare a new one while extracting the last wealth from the old. On September 30th, 2025, the Federal Reserve activated the FedNow instant payment service across every major US bank. Officially, it's for faster transactions. In reality, it creates a direct rail between the central bank and your money. This is the infrastructure for a central bank digital currency, a system where cash is obsolete and control is absolute. Rome reached its final stage in 476 AD when soldiers refused payment in debased coins and the government collapsed overnight. The Soviet Union hit its final stage in 1991 when the currency died and citizens bartered for food. Stage 7 is never announced with panic. It's implemented with policy, and we are already living inside it. Proof 1. FedNow launched September 30th, 2025. The first phase of centralized financial control is complete. Proof 2. A $600 trillion derivatives rollover set for November 2025, larger than world GDP, an unwinnable chain reaction waiting for a spark. Proof 3. Executive Order 14,067 already authorizes the digital dollar framework under national emergency powers. Proof 4. BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street collectively control over 22% of the S&P 500, the highest corporate concentration in history. Proof 5. Central banks worldwide bought record quantities of gold in 2024 and 2025, the largest since 1967, signaling the end of trust in fiat currencies. Spain's elites did the same in the 1600s, hoarding land and gold as the currency they issued collapsed. Britain's aristocrats did it before the pound's devaluation in 1949. When those with inside knowledge move to hard assets, collapse is not coming. It's underway. Here is the timeline they will never say out loud. January 1st, 2026. CBDC pilot launches with 50 million Americans through FedNow rails. March 15th, 2026. Negative interest rates introduced temporarily to stimulate growth. June 30th, 2026. Physical cash removal begins in New York, San Francisco, and Chicago. December 31st, 2026. Dollar revaluation. Overnight loss of 40% purchasing power. That's 427 days from the moment Stage 7 triggered. Every empire had its countdown. Rome took 3 centuries. Spain, a century and a half. Britain, 60 years. The Soviet Union, 30. Digital empires move faster. Ours has less than 2 years. History never saves the majority. It rewards the minority that acts before the collapse is official. Convert 20 to 30% of assets into physical gold and silver, in your possession, not a paper fund. Rome's citizens who held gold survived when the denarius died. Those who didn't starved with their coins. Move funds to local credit unions and community banks still outside FedNow integration until 2027. When Stage 8 begins, those independent networks buy time. Study the pattern. It never lies. Download the Stage 7 escape checklist linked below. Empires don't announce collapse on television. They call it restructuring. Every empire believed it was different. Rome believed its legions were invincible. Britain believed its pound was eternal. America believes its dollar is too important to fail. They were all wrong. Stage 7 is irreversible. The currency will die. The system will reset. The only choice left is whether you see it coming or watch it happen. Every second, the countdown continues. The clock is ticking. 427 days left. Subscribe right now. Turn on notifications. Share this video with every person you want to survive 2026. Comment Stage 7 below if you're awake. I'll see you in the next one, before they shut this channel down.